Greetings, Thrillseekers. I am the Master Programmer, curator of hidden knowledge and eerie tales. Today, I bring you 3 chilling stories unearthed by Lilith, each centered around the devil's cruel bargains and the high price of human desire. These tales delve into the darker corners of ambition, beauty, and love. So, if you're looking for a fright, something scary to watch at night, stay with us as we explore these 3 haunting stories. First, we have The Hourglass, a story of borrowed time, where every grain of sand falls at the cost of another's life. Next, in Flawless, the harrowing tale of a woman who wanted to be perfect, only to discover that perfection is the cruelest curse of all. Finally, in Perfectly Paired, a tale of love so perfect it becomes a prison, as a desperate heart learns the true cost of finding the one. These stories are not for the faint of heart, so sit back, turn down the lights, and prepare to face the chilling bargains that Lilith has unearthed. And if you enjoy our content, don't forget to subscribe for more tales of forbidden deals and eerie discoveries. Welcome to another journey into the unknown, brought to you by the .darkfiles. Robert Grayson's life was already in pieces when the diagnosis came. He had worked himself to the bone for decades, climbing the corporate ladder, only to find himself divorced from his wife and estranged from his only daughter, Megan. And now, cancer had decided to finish the job. 6 months to live, the doctor said, maybe less. The idea of dying before walking Megan down the aisle or seeing her graduate haunted him. He regretted all the years he'd missed, every recital, every birthday he'd skip for a meeting. He couldn't let it end like this. As Robert wandered aimlessly through the city, he saw it, a crooked wooden sign above a narrow alleyway, lit by a flickering lamp. The shop's name was simple, Timeless Wonders. The walls were lined with shelves of ticking clocks and hourglasses of every shape and size. At the counter stood a man. His black suit was perfectly pressed, and his hands rested motionless on the counter. "You're here for more time," the man said, his voice smooth and detached. Robert hesitated. "Is it true? Can you give me more time?" The man smiled faintly, reaching beneath the counter and pulling out an hourglass. It was elegant, its sands shimmering like crushed diamonds. The top half was nearly empty. "This is your time," the man said. "When the last grain falls, so do you. But if you wish, I can turn it over. Add more sand. Extend your time." "What's the price?" Robert asked, his voice trembling. "Time is borrowed, Mr. Grayson. For every hour I add to your life, another must be taken from someone else. It's your choice." Robert froze, the weight of the offer pressing down on him. But he thought of Megan, her graduation, her wedding, the life he hadn't been there for. "Do it," he said finally. "Give me more time." The man turned the hourglass over, and Robert felt a warmth spread through his chest, his pain fading. For the first time in months, he felt alive. He left the shop, clutching the hourglass, the sound of ticking clocks following him into the night. He reconnected with Megan, apologizing for the years he'd missed, and promised to make it right. But the hourglass was never far from his mind. He kept it hidden in his bedroom, its shimmering sand a constant reminder of the deal he'd made. Then, the news reports began. A woman in her 30s collapsed while jogging in the park. A young boy died in his sleep, his parents unable to wake him. The stories came faster and closer together, each one leaving Robert with a growing sense of dread. He turned on the news and saw Megan's best friend in the hospital, clinging to life after a sudden seizure. The camera panned to her parents, devastated. Robert's chest tightened as he realized what was happening. The time he had borrowed wasn't coming from just strangers. It was coming from people near him, those he loved, those connected to his life. Robert stormed back to the store, clutching the hourglass, but when he arrived, the alleyway was empty. The shop was gone, leaving only a faint ticking sound in the air. That night, he woke to find the hourglass on his bedside table. The sand was nearly empty again. In the faint light, Robert saw a shadow in the corner of his room, a figure standing perfectly still, watching him.
"You've taken enough,"
the voice whispered, low and resonant.
"It's time to pay."
The next morning, Robert was gone. His apartment was empty, except for the hourglass sitting on the kitchen counter. Beth Carter was already beautiful by most people's standards. She had piercing blue eyes, flawless skin, and high cheekbones that turned heads wherever she went. But for Beth, her reflection was never enough. Her nose a little too wide, her jawline not sharp enough. There was always a flaw to find. As a rising star in the world of modeling, she was surrounded by constant scrutiny. Photographers pointing out flaws, agencies suggesting surgery. No matter how much praise she received, Beth could never see herself as anything other than flawed. After a particularly humiliating casting call where the director dismissed her as pretty but forgettable, Beth sat crying in front of her bedroom mirror, but that's when she noticed something strange. Her reflection stared back at her, but the edge of the glass shimmered like water, and her reflection's lips curled into a smile. "You want to be perfect, don't you?" the reflection whispered. Beth froze, her heart pounding. The reflection leaned forward, the glass rippling like liquid. "I can give you what you want. Perfection, beauty beyond human comprehension." Desperate to finally feel worthy, Beth nodded. "What do I have to do?" The reflection extended its hand through the glass. "Take my hand, and you'll become the ideal version of yourself. Everyone will adore you." Beth hesitated only for a moment before grabbing the reflection's hand. The glass was cold, like ice, and her vision swam as the reflection whispered, "Let's begin." The next morning, Beth woke up feeling different. When she looked in the mirror, she gasped. Her nose was perfectly sculpted, her jawline sharp and elegant. Her skin glowed with an otherworldly radiance, and her body had transformed into the epitome of beauty. When she walked into her modeling agency, heads turned. Photographers who had ignored her were now begging to shoot her. Her face was on billboards within weeks, her follower count exploding. Beth had finally become the woman she'd always wanted to be. But something wasn't right. One night, while staring at herself in the mirror, Beth noticed something odd. Her nose, so perfectly sculpted before, now looked slightly crooked. Her skin, once flawless, seemed uneven in the dim light. Her reflection tilted its head and smiled. Not quite perfect yet, is it?" it whispered. "But don't worry, we can fix it. Just one more change." Beth became obsessed. She started tweaking her appearances with surgery and procedures, each time convinced she was getting closer to perfection. Her cheekbones were sharpened, her lips plumped, her eyes lifted, but every time she looked in the mirror, all she could see were imperfections. No one else seemed to notice the changes. Her fans still adored her, praising her beauty, but Beth couldn't see what they saw. To her, every feature was distorted, grotesque, wrong. Beth started avoiding people, terrified they'd see her as the monster she'd believed she'd become. She covered her mirrors with sheets, but the whispers followed her. She couldn't escape the feeling that her reflection was watching, even when she wasn't looking. One day, a photographer begged her to come back for a shoot. He told her she was still the most beautiful woman in the world, but Beth laughed bitterly. "You're lying. Can't you see how hideous I've become?" That night, she decided to take control in the only way she could. She locked herself in the bathroom with a knife, staring into the mirror as her reflection laughed at her. Beth began to carve into her skin, determined to fix what was wrong. The next morning, Beth showed up at her modeling agency, wrapped in bandages. Her face was barely visible beneath the gauze, but her managers were horrified by the stains of blood soaking through. "I'm ready to work," Beth said, her voice eerily calm. "I finally fixed everything. I'm perfect now." Lila Harper was tired of being alone. At 35, her relationships had all ended in disappointment, and she was growing used to the quiet loneliness of her one-bedroom apartment. One sleepless night, after a string of bad dates, she stumbled across a strange website, Perfectly Paired. Its promise was simple: "We'll find your perfect partner, guaranteed." Lila filled out the application, pouring her heart into the personal questions. She didn't expect much, but the next day, she got a phone call. The voice on the other end was smooth and velvety, almost hypnotic. "Congratulations, Lila. Your perfect match has been found. He'll find you soon." And then the line went dead. The next day, Aaron walked into her life. He was handsome, charming, and everything Lila had ever wanted in a partner. He seemed to know her better than anyone ever had. Her favorite foods, the movies she loved. It was perfect. Too perfect. At first, Lila convinced herself it was just fate. Aaron made her laugh, supported her career, and treated her like she was the center of the universe. But as weeks passed, she started to notice things. Aaron always knew where she was, even when she didn't tell him. He showed up unexpectedly, at her work, the gym, even her friend's house. When she asked him how, he just smiled and said, "Because I know you, Lila. I'll always know you." One night, after an argument, Lila left her apartment to clear her head. She walked for hours, ending up at a diner miles away from home. But when she walked through the door, Aaron was already there, sitting at the counter, waiting for her. "I told you," he said with a soft smile. "I'll always find you." That's when her unease turned to fear. Lila began digging into Perfectly Paired, but the website was gone. The URL led to a blank page. Then, late one night, her laptop turned on by itself, and a single message appeared on the screen. "You asked for him." Things got worse. One morning, Lila accidentally spilled coffee on Aaron's shirt. As she tried to clean it, she noticed something strange beneath his skin. Something too smooth, too hard, like it wasn't skin at all. Aaron caught her wrist before she could look closer, his grip like iron. His smile never wavered, but his eyes darkened. "Why are you trying to ruin this?" he asked. "Don't you see? We're perfect together. You wanted this." Lila realized that Aaron wasn't human. He wasn't a man. He was something created, something unnatural. Terrified, Lila tried to break things off, but Aaron wouldn't let her go. He followed her everywhere, always calm, always smiling. "You can't leave me, Lila," he said one night, standing outside her apartment. "You asked for me. I exist for you. If you try to leave me, you'll lose everything." Lila barricaded herself in her bedroom, shaking with fear. But when she turned to the mirror, Aaron was there, standing behind her. His perfect face began to crack, and his voice echoed like static as he whispered,
You can't escape me, Lila. You are mine.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our page to stay updated. Stay vigilant. The unknown is always closer than you think.